Hi everyone, it's Kate and welcome to episode 1 of Roswell's Mysteries, which is going to be a series on my channel where I bring you stories of different paranormal, supernatural, kind of unsolved mysteries, less of the true crime aspect, more of the kind of creepy and unusual. So without further ado, let's get into the Mad Gasser of Mattoon. The Mad Gasser of Mattoon is the term coined for a phenomena that occurred in Mattoon, Illinois during August and September of 1944. It refers to the person or persons who may or may not be responsible for a series of gas attacks that took place in Mattoon during this time. So over this 2-week span of time, there were reported to be between 24 and 35 victims of these gas attacks, along with additional sightings of an alleged assailant. Victims reported a strange odor followed by paralysis of the legs, coughing, nausea, and vomiting. However, some believe that none of this was real. Throughout the entire investigation into these alleged attacks, police remained skeptical. Little to no physical evidence was found. There's varying reports between the official reports and then the non. Police believe that many of these reports that were coming in had simple explanations, whether that be odors from nearby factories or animals or even just spilled nail polish. The victims would quickly recover from their symptoms and nobody ever reported any long-term effects or problems. And although the police weren't necessarily taking these attacks seriously, the media ran all of these reports as if all of this information was fact. So in this video, we're going to go through the attacks and what happened with them, and we're kind of going to be facing it more like the media did, as if these attacks did happen, but I do have some police information as well. The first attack happened on August 31st, 1944. Urban Reef, who lived in Mattoon, awoke to a strange smell that eventually overpowered him and he became violently ill. Mr. Reef woke up his wife, who thought that there could be an issue with the pilot light, and that was where the odor was coming from. However, when Mrs. Reef tried to get up to go check the pilot light, she couldn't move her legs. Their symptoms soon went away, and they went downstairs to check the pilot light, and the pilot light was fine. There was no pilot light issue. And at this same time, another young mother who lived in the area also reported waking up to hearing her daughter coughing, but when she tried to get up to go care for her daughter, she was unable to move, similar to how Mrs. Reef couldn't move her legs. September 1st, 1944, the third incident is reported. Mrs. Kearney of Mattoon reports a strong, sweet smell around 11 p.m. She dismisses the smell at first, believing it to be coming from the flowers that were outside her window, until the smell eventually became stronger and she began to lose feeling in her legs. Obviously, as any of us would do, she starts freaking out and she calls out to her sister, Mrs. Reddy, who's also in the house. Now, Mrs. Reddy had also noticed the odor and she had determined that it was coming from an open window in the bedroom. They contacted the police, but no sign of an assailant was found. So around 12:30 a.m., Mr. Kearney, who was a taxi driver and had been working at the time of the attack, returns home to find an unidentified man hiding in front of their house near one of the windows. Unfortunately, this man fled and Mr. Kearney was unable to catch up to him. Unfortunately, Mr. Kearney was unable to catch the assailant when he left, but his description of the prowler was a tall man dressed in dark clothing wearing a tight-fitting cap. This description was given to the media and shaped the description of the Mad Gasser throughout the entire Mattoon incident. And after the attack, Mrs. Kearney reports a burning sensation of her lips and her throat associated with gas. At the time, the Kearneys had had a lot of money in the house, and it was suspected that the assailant had seen Mrs. Kearney counting it in the house earlier, and that's why they decided to attack the house. And local newspapers incorrectly reported this as the first Mad Gasser attack. Up to 6 similar attacks were reported, though no physical evidence was really found, and nobody was able to get a real clear description of the attacker. September 5th, 1944, Carl and Buela Cordes? They return home around 10 p.m., and shortly after they return home, they find the first piece of evidence. And I say evidence very loosely. Like I said, the police reported that there was no physical evidence because nothing could actually be confirmed. But this first piece of evidence that was found, they discovered a piece of white cloth slightly larger than a handkerchief on this cloth on their porch next to their screen door. And for some reason, Mrs. Cord picks up this piece of fabric and smells it. As soon as she inhales, she becomes physically ill, describing it as being similar to an electrical shock. Her face began to swell, her throat and her lips were burning, and she began to vomit. And similar to the previous report, she reported feeling weak and losing feeling in her legs. So losing feelings in your legs seems to be a commonality between all of these attacks. And she believes that the cloth was left on their porch because that's where their dog normally lays. And so she theorized that the assailant left the cloth there to knock the dog out so that it would be easier for them to enter the home without the dog barking, without being attacked, that kind of thing. So it's reported that they also found a well-used skeleton key and lipstick. And I don't know what that means, but little came of this evidence anyway, so take it with a grain of salt. Police found no trace of chemicals on the cloth that could account for the symptoms she was experiencing. That same night, a Mrs. Burrell reports that a stranger breaks into her bedroom and attempts to gas her. So this is the first report that's kind of a more physical and aggressive approach. So as the public grew more and more concerned, the FBI became involved. And it was during this time that there was an increase in physical evidence that, hey, maybe these attacks are actually happening. Footprints were found outside of homes and little tears in window screens. September 12th, 1944, police began to receive an increase in false alarms when it comes to reports about seeing a prowler or smelling gas that didn't pan out or didn't lead anywhere. Police in turn reduced priority for the case. Essentially, they just didn't take it seriously and they explained it away, and that was it. And although at this point the police have essentially written this case off, there are a lot of theories that people have come up with regarding the incident and the attacks. So that's what we're going to get into now. Like police had theorized, they said that it could have been odors from nearby factories, and that was what people were smelling. One of the theories is that the wind actually carried chemicals through Mattoon, and that's why people were experiencing their symptoms. I think that's kind of a loose theory, just because where's the wind bringing them from? And if the wind was coming, like, why was it random? Why were random people being attacked? Like, yeah, I'm not an expert. Another theory was that toxic water or pollution in the water was causing people to react this way, whether that was they were actually experiencing these symptoms or they just thought they were experiencing these symptoms. So besides wind carried chemicals and water pollution, there are two main theories when it comes to this case. The first of which being mass hysteria. So a lot of people, including the police, thought that there was no actual gasser, no one was actually attacking these people, and their symptoms were all psychological, similar to the Salem witch trials being one of the biggest, most famous cases of mass hysteria, if that's what you believe. The entire town was so scared that they believed they were experiencing these symptoms. They were in this sort of mass panic. And of course, the final theory is that there was actually an assailant, there was an actual gasser who was going around and poisoning these people. The motive for that being unclear because there weren't any real robberies. The effects were not long lasting. The victims seemed to be just random people in the town. So I honestly don't know what I believe. So what do you guys think? I honestly don't know what I believe. I want to lean toward the idea that there was an actual attacker, but there is not a lot of physical evidence, and mass hysteria is a thing that can happen. So I honestly don't know what I believe, but thanks for watching. This was the first episode of Roswell's Mystery, so I thought I would do something that was a little lighter. Can I say that? And that is the case of the Mad Gasser of Mattoon. Beep, beep.